arrival of Malcolm's family made for a pleasant diversion from the dreary mood he was in due to his injury. He had yet scheduled a surgery, but he was definitely not going to finish the season either. Being in that limbo of what now fogged his mind, so the surprise visit helped as a welcome distraction. Malcolm's parents had been married for over 20 years and still seemed to be madly in love as they dotted over their grandchildren, from Malcolm's brother and his wife and Malcolm's sister and her boyfriend. The once lonely house was now full of cheer and laughter of young children. Malcolm's mom had brought a pot of his favorite dish, shrimp gumbo, and she was preparing to heat it up on the stovetop. She surveyed his fridge and pantries to see how he was living, and finding that they were full of protein shakes and condiments that a bachelor would have. She started making a list of ready-to-prep dishes she could prepare and freeze that would be ready for him at a moment's notice. Malcolm's father, seeing the game that Malcolm injured himself, wanted to connect with his son and see where his head was at, knowing how hard he had worked to get to the majors. He then delivered a talk Malcolm had heard hundreds of times over the years growing up that seemed like part Bible parable and something from a movie. He spoke on how being an adult meant responsibility and how growing through tough times made you a stronger person. Malcolm was glad to hear every word his dad delivered to him on the balcony, looking out at the ocean in the distance. At about that time is when Malcolm got the call from his coach, with the team docs on the line to discuss him coming in with the doctor from the hospital he saw to make a timeline from his surgery to his recovery and his return. Everyone on the phone line seemed optimistic, yet they knew the remaining year for Malcolm was shot. Malcolm accepted the orders of the team and would show up at the team workout facility the following day. For now, Malcolm tried to stay clear-headed and pleasant with his family around, but in the back of his mind, he had to wonder. Malcolm then visited with his brother and his wife, showing them the pathway he takes to get down to the beach, having their kids as little tag-alongs. He even talked to his sister and her boyfriend, making hints to when the two may get married. By the time Malcolm and everyone had gotten back from the beach, his mom had a wonderful meal prepared from what she could scavenge from Malcolm's fridge and pantries to go along with the gumbo. They all went out on the balcony to dine together, enjoying each other's company. Yet there was still an elephant in the room, which was Malcolm's future as a ball player. Malcolm soon approached the topic. He shared what the doctors had told him and that he would be heading in tomorrow to talk with the team staff and assess his injury and getting a second opinion and develop a timeline for his recovery after the surgery. Come that night, and sleeping arrangements were made for the children and other family members. Malcolm stood outside on the balcony looking at the stars. He had had a lengthy conversation with his brother on varying subjects, but mainly about life, and letting him know he could make it through this tough time. The next morning, Malcolm left for the workout facility, while his family stayed at the house. His mother would soon venture out with his father to shop for the items on her list, while Malcolm's brother and sister and their significant other enjoyed the beach and the downstairs basketball court with their children. Upon arriving at the facility, Malcolm was met by a small group of reporters wanting to know the latest on his injury. Without discussing too much, as his arm was still in a sling, he tried to keep it positive, letting them know basically things weren't so black and white. After the meeting today, he'd have a better idea of what he was going to face. Inside the facility, Malcolm met with the manager, team docs, and specialist. They soon got to examining him thoroughly and diagnosed the problem. Their suggestions started with surgery and a possible recovery time of 6 months, give or take a few. It then really began to sink in, as a given timeline would mean Malcolm would miss the start of spring training of the following year. It wasn't devastating news, but the idea that the surgery may not fix all the problems was a bit worrisome. On his drive home, knowing his family would be soon leaving and getting back to their lives, he began to see the days coming ahead of him growing darker as he'd be alone in his recovery. He thought back to when Candace had stayed with him in the off-season of his first year and how enjoyable that was, and how great it would be if she could be there now. Malcolm didn't wait too long before sharing the news of what lied ahead for him as a ball player with his family. He spoke with optimism in his voice, yet the gravity of the situation weighed on everyone. So at that point, Malcolm shared a joke that brought back the levity to the family as they sat down for one more family meal in such a trying time. The next day, Malcolm sent everyone off with love, thanking them for the visit. In the silence that remained upon their absence, Malcolm wrote out an ad, looking for a roommate, knowing the company may be helpful in his time of recovery.